Yeah, so the deal was pretty simple: 720,000 over 3 years, right? So 20,000 a month, plus some interest after that.
5 years later, you still have all the cash?
No, 5 years later, it's gone.
Whoa! And then, okay, that's why I'm here. That's what I want to know. Tell me how you messed up that cash, Ben. My friends, I think for sure, as a business owner, it's everybody's dream that you sell a business. We've heard a lot of stories on the show about people who have been successful with their business and then sold their business for reasons. And then what happens after that? Where does the money go? How long does it last? What do you do afterward? What does life after exit look like? And recently, I was talking to my friend Ben Knegendorf, who's been on the show before, back in 2022, and he had this experience. He sold a business, and then I believe, and he's going to share this with us because he gave this talk and is really candid, just shared all the numbers. He's going to tell us where the money went. Where did it go? Ben Knegendorf, thanks for joining me. How you doing? I want to know where the money went.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back. Yeah, I told you I did this presentation, and you turned it into a nice little talk here. So I'm excited to see how we can turn a presentation into a podcast. Because you're right, it's interesting what happens after you get a lump sum of money, and I think it's even more interesting what happens when you get payouts, if you will, and in the middle of COVID. Like COVID was just an absolute weird time in so many different ways, and I think you'll see that in some of the places the money went.
The other thing I want to bring up that I didn't in my intro is your origin story before you were in this position selling a successful e-com business for $750,000. You were a forklift operator at Walmart, right?
Yeah, it all started in 2015, as I mentioned. I think I was on your show in early 22. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Where I kind of gave you my backstory there. But yeah, I was driving a forklift at a Walmart distribution center, and just a kid with a dream, if you will, Kurt. And look where we are now. So look, I think anyone can do this stuff. It's just you have to put your attention to it and actually give a shit, like, put in the effort instead of sitting on your couch watching Netflix or playing Call of Duty or whatever it is you do.
Okay, I like sitting on my couch playing PlayStation, but 100% I'm not going to build a successful business doing that. The pandemic was such an interesting time. So tell me, when you went to sell this business, when you signed it, when you sold it.
Yeah, so if you remember in my previous story, again, I didn't own this whole business, right? I actually consulted these two boys to $250,000 in sales in their first 3 months. And then they asked me to come on board. I paid $20,000 for 20% of the business, and we scaled from $1 million in revenue in the first year to $11 million 2 years later. And that's when they approached me and they were like, "Hey, I think we're ready to go off on our own. We're ready to jump out of the nest, if you will." And this was February of 2020, so just shortly before interesting times. And they approached me, and we kind of all felt like it was a good time to go our separate ways. I certainly was interested in a payday, and they were interested in going on their own. And kind of wild, next month or so in the world after that.
That March 2020 is when everything shuts down, and then obviously that becomes a strange period in the world. Prior to then, the before times never considered such things. So how much did you get?
Yeah, so the deal was pretty simple: 720,000 over 3 years, right? So 20,000 a month, plus some interest after that, which is no one's gonna balk at that kind of deal.
20,000 a month. The risk I've always heard with payouts is they stop coming at some point. Did you get the full? Were there disputes? Did you get the full payout?
Yeah, no disputes. I had full confidence in what was built over there, and really where the company was going. If I'm honest, in hindsight, I would tell you there were bottlenecks that were probably cleared up once I left. Like I think I was more hesitant on the hiring that needed to be done. As soon as I left, they hired like 10 people. And then, as you know, I signed the check and I was flying home on like March 4th, March 5th. A week later, the world shut down. I can picture Mark Cuban's face as he's at the basketball game looking at his phone like, oh my goodness. And then, as you can imagine, an indoor golf company did pretty well during that next period. So I think I was pretty confident about like where we were going or where the company was going. And I certainly had confidence in the two founders of the company. They're both rock stars. And so I personally wasn't worried. I've definitely heard it from other people who have earned out and they're worried about it. I think a lot of people still meddle in those companies to make sure everything's going well, and they try to do the best they can. But yeah, no, it was a clean break, and I felt good about it.
Okay, so no lump sum payment up front here. This starts at a consistent monthly payment, start to finish.
Yep.
Okay, and I think that changes a little bit. There's a difference between someone hands me $500,000 and someone hands me an annuity. Makes it, I think, maybe a little harder to spend through it all. When there's not just a giant pile of cash, sitting in front of me. What's the first thing you bought?
If I'm honest, I don't have a recollection of buying anything in March 2020. I think it was such a weird time. So those first payments came in late March or early April, and full transparency, my wife had two very close family members die very early on from COVID, and so I think
Oh,
our
jeez.
our lived experience was much different than most people. Could go all the way to one extreme of like, COVID's not real, no one died from it, to it's very real, and I'm very scared. And I think we were closer to that further end of like, holy shit, like we have very close family members who passed away. And so we spent most of those months, as a lot of us did, not doing anything,
So
right? There
5 years
was
later, you still have all the cash?
no 5 years later, it's gone. Honestly,
Oh!
that's what I made this whole presentation about. Is like, where did it go? And it certainly went to some good things, and went to some. I called it mid in this presentation. I think I'm too old to say that word. And some terrible things as well. But look, I'm happy to share with you everywhere it went.
Okay, that's why I'm here. That's what I want to know. Tell me how you messed up that cash, Ben.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm just going to share some of these slides. I hope it helps. So
Please do.
the first thing I did, I invested close to $100,000 on coaching, masterminds, events, and mentorship. Right, so that includes coaching with my coach Elliot Rowe, as you can see on the screen there. I think he's the best mindset coach in the world. Mastermind events like the one ECF. Where I know Kurt's a big fan of
E-commerce
ECF. I'm
fueled
big.
ECF, yeah.
Right, yeah. It could be little mastermind events like you see on the screen, or live events such as e-commerce fuel. And I did a bunch of one-on-one consulting as well with different types of mentors. So I would consider that a good place to spend the money. At one of those events, I met Mike Dillard. I don't know if you know who Mike Dillard is or was. He was a big guy in the information marketing space back in the day. And this was the first moment I kind of had a inkling of, hey, maybe I should do something here. He literally pulled me aside and he's like, hey, that money could set you up for life, right? If you just knew how to put it to work. And he kind of gave me a talking to, but I wasn't listening. But more good here. I had a kid. Um, the hospital bill hits really, really hard when you're on entrepreneurial healthcare. I don't know what anyone listening to this is doing, but if you go to the marketplace, or you go anywhere else, you don't get the best healthcare or the most affordable healthcare. But no complaints, Kurt. I would literally have 10 more of these people. I mean, seriously, look at this fucking kid. He's so cute. We spent 5 straight winters in Florida, which was a big deal for me. Speaking of that coach Elliot Rowe, I got on a call with him one day in the middle of winter. He's like, how you going, mate? And I just said, like, it's winter. I hate my life. I don't want to be here in Wisconsin. And he was like, then why are you there? He's like, you have the money, you have the resources, and you don't need to be anywhere. Just leave. And I'm really glad he said that. So we spent 5 straight winters in Florida. We flew grandparents on both sides down, aunts and uncles on both sides down. Just intentional, like, living, right? This is memories we'll have forever. And then another great place I would say I spent the money was on a concierge doctor. He helped me identify why I couldn't seem to shed any weight despite wearing 400 pounds at one point. So none of those were like bad decisions, but none of them were part of a wealth plan either, if that makes sense, Kurt.
So someone early on tries to tell you should. I'm assuming you should invest the money.
Yeah. Yeah, he gave me a bunch of options for like REITs that, he lives in Austin. And so he was like, I can connect you with this person to get your money in a REIT. I can connect you with this person who can invest it over here. I can connect you with somebody over here. I think the mastermind I happened to see him at was right in the middle of 21 or 22 when the market first crashed a little bit in July. And he was like, you kind of missed the rally here on crypto. I wouldn't go into crypto right now. We're going to enter a bear market. I wouldn't put my money in the market. It's going to, turn sour, but there are places like real estate, long-term things that you can put your money into that are going to make sense long-term. And, if you just keep it in your account, it's going to disappear. I promise you that. And he was right.
It's easy for me to go, hindsight 2020, go, yeah, no, absolutely. You should have just invested in this. And then, you would have untold millions. But at the time, when you're watching, you don't know what's going to happen, especially in that first year of the pandemic, and the market's tanking. You're like, well, do I really want to do this?
I think the big thing for me was like immediate lifestyle creep, if you will, right? So I went from making,
Lifestyle creep.
like, we
Gets
were
a lot of
distributing
entrepreneurs.
6K a month roughly to me, right? And I had some consulting on the side, and as well as I had a company, Paramount Pet Health, at the time, that was doing pretty well. But that 6 turned into 20, right? Essentially, the payouts just kept coming at 20. And so it was very easy for me to just go, I have more, I'm going to spend more, right? Like the second you earn more, your life seems to expand to match it. Not,
Yep.
it doesn't happen with Lambos. I know you're a Tesla guy. It doesn't happen with Teslas, but it happens with Amazon boxes and like slight upgrades and more meals out and better vacations. And it just continues to add up, and you don't really notice it as it's creeping along. Like lifestyle creep is a real thing that I don't think I would have ever imagined to be a thing, just given where I came from. I grew up relatively poor, Kurt, like very, low middle class. And I couldn't imagine being in a place where I was making, those mailbox money checks that were coming in on a monthly basis. Two of those is like what my dad made as a kid. So I don't think it registered with me the gravity of the situation.
Continue. I derailed you with you were running us through, the good stuff you'd spent it on.
Yeah, I'll take you to the mid if you want.
Yeah, I wanna hear
That
it.
was all the positive I had, so I hope you weren't hoping for more, but, I'll take you to the mid, as the kids call it. By the way, Gemini in slides is great. It made all of these images. It's awesome. This is then the presentation when I was really hoping the room would raise their hand, Kurt, so maybe you could raise your hand. How many of you own an NFT? Yeah, great. How many of you own worthless NFTs now? Oh, yeah,
I
your hands
almost
are all
bought
still.
an NFT once, and then I found the process so difficult. I'm like, I'm just not gonna bother with this. And of course, the NFT I was trying to buy became worthless
Yeah, of
pretty
course.
quickly. Yeah,
So
NFTs. Okay.
So I bought some. Some did really well. I still hold some, but most of them, like everyone else's, went to zero. Right. So I'm a huge Gary V fan. He has his V friends, which you can see some of those on there, and his NFTs have treated me well. Certainly, all the stuff that he gives away to his NFT holders have treated me well. And honestly, I
How
think
much, man? How much did you spend on NFTs?
I don't know if I could put a dollar figure on what I spent on it versus what is still here. If I'm honest with you, there's a whole lot of scroll underneath these ones that are actually still worth some semblance of money. So. Um, I started actually accumulating Bitcoin during that time and speculating on Ethereum and a bunch of other shit coins that were going to make me rich. It's not like it was one bad call. There's not like one coin I put it all in and lost it all. It was just like death by a thousand. Why not? Like let's just try this stuff. So I did start actually accumulating Bitcoin though during that time. And even though I played stupid games and I learned stupid lessons with the shit coins, I'm glad I went through the what is money journey. It caused me to learn economics and understanding investing and wealth at a much deeper level. So I'm really glad I started that. If you want, I can jump right into the bad here
Yeah, let's hear it.
because this is where it gets fun, right? So this is dumb stuff. So have you had Taylor Holiday on this podcast before?
Uh, yeah, as a lightning interview. Yes, smart guy. I
Okay.
like him.
Formerly of Common Thread Co. I love Taylor. Somewhere in the middle of COVID, he had tweeted back when you were tweeting. Um, who wants to play poker? Like I'm lonely. I want to do some stuff. So we put together this ragtag group of like e-commerce entrepreneurs and agency owners and just a bunch of different people, and we all started playing poker on Wednesday night. And somehow us playing poker turned into us getting like pitched by companies while we were playing poker. So we had multiple different companies come through, pitch us on their business while we're all playing poker for real money. And then we all as a group said, hey, do we want to make an investment in this company or not? So we as a group invested in two of them. So the first one was called Dibs. So what Dibs was is a fractionalization marketplace, right? So think of stocks. You can buy fractions of a company, right, by buying stocks. But there are a lot of other assets that you can't buy fractions of, right? So sports cards is where they started. If you wanted to go buy a PSA 10 Michael Jordan rookie card, you're looking at $10,000 to $20,000 somewhere in there. You might want to buy one, Kirk, because you love Michael Jordan, living in Illinois. But most of us probably don't. Or if we wanted the action on sports cards or on art or on anything else that could fractionalize, you would need a marketplace like this where you could go buy 1% of a Michael Jordan card and like enjoy the upside and then sell that 1% to someone else.
At its face, this does not seem like a bad idea. I have seen similar ideas. I've seen this done with art. I've seen it done with luxury watches. I've seen it done with cars. It's not. Again, I'm risk averse, and so I'm like, okay, well, if I want to do my investing, I can just do it in the U.S. stock market is my preference. But this doesn't. I can see where someone would present this to you, and if you had the cash, you'd be like, okay, I'm willing to take a risk on this.
Yeah, and it only got better, right? If you're at all into sports and they start telling you, well, this athlete and this athlete and this athlete and this famous athlete, they've all invested and you could be co-investors alongside all of these people that you look up to, that gets more intriguing. And then they raised a special round and only took investment from Amazon. And we were like, oh, like, holy shit, this is actually happening. The founder had experience in a different company doing quite well prior to this. They ended up securing, I don't want to call it a banking charter, but it's like one of only a dozen or so, not banking charters, but something like that in the state of New York. Um, and they still went bankrupt. Like it still didn't work out, right? And so we invested as a group. I invested $25,000 of my own money into this. As like it's a pretty normal size check when you're doing VC investing. I'm a big VC now, Kurt. But this just became a $25,000 write off.
So it didn't work out.
It did not.
So, sir, if you got these payouts, what about taxes?
Yeah, this is, if you don't mind, I'm going to share this. Gemini created this slide. This is my favorite slide, and this will be my first pre rant, if you will.
Uncle Sam looks really sinister in your slide.
Yeah. You know, Uncle Sam took a share, roughly 25% of my exit, about $180,000 gone, just like that. And let me be clear, that wasn't a contribution, that was theft. There was no value exchange, no option, no gratitude, just force, pay it or go to jail.
So what else?
Well, the one that I told you I could rant on a little bit more, if you don't mind,
Please.
is inflation, right? I don't think
Oh,
anyone really understands what inflation is or understands how it's just this like force. So I'm going to give your listeners a little history lesson, if that's okay.
let's hear it.
All right, so let me give you a little history lesson here. So in 1944, after World War II, world leaders came together in a little place called Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. They agreed to peg every major currency to the US dollar, and we in turn pegged our dollar to gold. So your
The
dollars
gold
weren't just
standard.
the gold standard. Yes, your dollars weren't just paper, they were a claim on gold, real value, something solid. So Bretton Woods lasted until 1971, when Richard Nixon famously goes on TV and says, "We're suspending the gold standard." And he said suspending, right? Like it was going to be temporary. Of course, that was not. What he meant was we printed too much money and we can't cover it. So we're cutting the tether. So here's what happened next. So if you look at this chart on the screen, gold didn't become more valuable magically in 1971. Your dollar became worthless. Gold didn't go up, your dollar went down. It's like watching your life savings erode in slow motion. If you zoom in here from 1971, it was flat, by the way, flat all the way up till 1971, minus that little bump in 1933 where they confiscated all the gold. If you zoom in, since we left the gold standard, the price of gold is skyrocketing, right? And I wonder why that is. But you can see on this chart, the currency has continued to inflate and your purchasing power has constantly deflated.
You're right. Like dollar loses purchasing power over time is the key, takeaway here. Like when you look back on this retroactively, what's the word you would use for how you treated this money?
Man, I don't know if I have a good word for it. Just like I would say reckless and more so like ignorance. I don't think I knew what to do. Again, I grew up in
That's
um
gonna be my other question.
yeah, I grew up in a lower middle class and uh I learned the phrase rob Peter to pay Paul from my dad. Like we would put a vacation on one card and then when 0% got offered on this card, we'd put it on this card and we'd continue moving that until we could possibly pay it off in minimum payments and we just didn't have a lot. I just didn't have any education on what to do with money before then or after that moment.
That's the trouble is, the our education system doesn't teach you like wealth management. If you had to do this over again, clearly you would approach it differently. You are lucky enough and skilled enough that you have that opportunity. You sold your Paramount Pet Health you mentioned earlier, your other business, right? For how much?
So we sold that company right around 800, somewhere around there.
Okay, so a similar amount of money as well. When was this?
Last year, last October.
Okay, so this time around when it shows up, or you're like, all right, how are we handling it?
Yeah, first off, I need to shout them out because I know they've been on your show before. Leanna Patch was my partner in that business.
Oh,
Leighton Taylor was my partner in that business. So a big win for all of us. It was a fun time. But I definitely handled it differently, right? Immediately I recognized, and I should have recognized this the first time, that I had other sources of income. I didn't need to do anything with this money. I didn't need to just spend it because I had it. It also came in a lump sum this time, which is very different than getting it, monthly. And I just said, I'm not going to buy anything out of the gates. Like literally, I'm not going to buy anything. The only thing I told myself I would do is buy myself an infrared sauna. It's something I've wanted in my house for a while. And so I did that. I bought an infrared sauna and put it in my basement and I set aside the fucking tax money. And then I put the rest in Bitcoin, all of it. Because I just wanted to put it in a place where it wasn't going to get devalued against the dollar.
so what's your takeaways? What's your advice here? Like this is clearly about wealth building.
Yeah, I got a slide in here that I kind of referenced in the room, right? So again, I run dropshipbreakthrough.com with my partner John. We teach people how to start e-commerce businesses, specifically high ticket dropshipping. If you want to understand all the benefits of that, you can certainly go listen to my last episode on here, or I'm sure we have a webinar on our homepage or something like that. But there's people in the room they're running the best investment vehicle they'll ever have. And there's probably a lot of people listening to that too, right? So if you look at, let's just use this first case study we talked about. I spent 20K to get 20% of that business, and I exited 3 years later for 720. Right, that's 3,500% growth, plus all of the dividends monthly in between there. If you're running any business whatsoever, if it's making a dollar, you already have the best investment vehicle you've ever had. You should spend more time trying to grow the thing you can control than putting it somewhere and hoping it grows for you. That's my opinion. The rich get richer, as they say, right? Put your money in assets, and your assets will ride that devaluation up.
This is a great episode. You're so candid. You really shared everything, and all really with the intention of helping others with the same mistake or showing other people, hey, you're not alone in these same things because everyone has made mistakes with money. Everybody. And so it's just refreshing to hear somebody talk about it because you go online and it's like nothing but Gen Z kids with Lambos, and then other people complaining that Gen Z kids don't know how to do anything. You're like, okay, yeah, like I don't know what to believe anymore. So with you, it's nice to hear something honest.
I'm just happy to share. I hope somebody, at home can relate to either this version of the story or the last one in 2022. I think that's a different version of my story as well that hopefully more people can relate to and realize, we're all just doing our best here.
And Ben, where can we learn more about you?
Absolutely. You can find me at dropshipbreakthrough.com or on the Dropship podcast. And John and I are about to launch a new, more business focused, interesting podcast soon too. So look for that coming soon.
Cool. Very cool. Ben Knegendorf, Dropship Breakthrough. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, buddy.